Welcome back. This is To Be Frank. Today we speak with an inspirational guest and a close friend of mine, Will Polston, about his international success with his book, North Star Thinking, how to find fulfillment in life, and what it's like to spoon a drag queen. This isn't one to miss. Let's get into it. For the benefit of those listening, would you like to introduce yourself, Will?
I'm Will Polston, and I am a business strategist and performance coach. I'm an entrepreneur, award-winning author, international speaker. I mean, there's a few things we could probably reel off. Pilot as of now as well. But yeah, that's me. And father now. Father, fiance.
Oh, it's all. Do you know what? I mean, I've had the benefit of knowing you for 3 years now.
Is that all it's been? 3 years?
3 years. I thought time flies when you're having fun. It's like, wait, what a drag!
I thought I've known you forever. No, well, we'll get into talking about it. But yeah, I vividly remember the first day we met. Do you?
I vividly remember the first conversation we had. I was very nervous, and the position I was in as a business owner and personally was not a good place. And I think I came to you out of desperation more than anything, because we found ourselves in a position where business was crap. I was sitting in the office till 9, 10 o'clock at night, really, really struggling to kind of just make ends meet and pay the bills and get things in order. And I've been involved in Bitter for a long time, which is where we kind of first met at the I think the Lansdowne Hotel. That's where I first saw you.
The very first time I remember our conversation was at a Bitter X event. It was a breakfast.
Kimpton.
It was I forget the name of the hotel. Yeah, I think it was Kimpton, and we were in the little back area. And I think that was a day that I was actually speaking from memory.
It was.
I was speaking at it. It was a Bitter X event, and I think at that time I was definitely on the Bitter X board. I don't remember if I was Bitter X chairman at that point, but I remember us being sat next to each other having breakfast, and I remember being really impressed. I remember being really impressed by you and what you'd done and what you'd achieved. And I call certain moments eyebrow raising moments, when you go, really? And it was one of those moments when you were telling me about the business, how long you'd had it, what you'd done at such a young age. And I just remember being really impressed by you. And then you went on to talk about your DJing, and then you went on to talk about your martial arts. I thought, wow, this guy is an impressive guy. And that was my initial thought. And then I got to know you over what I thought had probably been since pre-COVID, but maybe it was post-COVID then. And I think I found that you're even more impressive than I first thought.
Oh, thank you very much. But less about me. I think the reason I was drawn to you is I see a lot of myself in you. We've done like the personality test, or you got me to do a personality test when I first signed up to one of your masterminds. And you sort of called me up and was like, do you know what, it's basically identical to my one. Like, you could lay them over each other, both very creative, both very kind of like focused and driven. So that was nice to see. And I think that's probably why I gelled so well with what you are trying to achieve with the dinner, the masterminds, and even the charity events. So tell me a little bit more about kind of what you focus on specifically with your business. Now, I know you've got a few businesses, and we've touched briefly on its coaching and business coaching, but I feel like you're a little bit more than that. I don't tell people they should go to you if they're looking just for business advice or just for sales advice. It's more than that. And yeah, do you want to just elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah, I actually don't regard myself as a business coach at all. I regard myself as a strategist and performance coach that works with a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners. So I know if I just meet someone and I say that, it sounds almost quite, it's like, well, it's romantic, you're a business coach. But I find that the best work that we do with clients actually isn't just, right, well, here's how to sell, here's how to do marketing. Now, yeah, I've learned a few things for my own business and know a thing or two, like we all do, in terms of as you get more experience at doing stuff. But yeah, that's my thing. And the thing that I've been obsessed with now for nearly 20 years is anything to do with human awareness, human potential, human behavior. I like looking for the edge. What's the difference that makes the difference? What is it that I can do that will put me in that 1% of the 1%? And that's what I've really been obsessed with for years and years and years now, particularly when it came to career. And then I've seen how that's filtered out into other areas of life since.
Brilliant. And what does life look like for you now?
In the sense of,
Well, there's like myself, there's quite a few, and we'll touch on kind of like what got you to that point and how your kind of like career has evolved, if you want to go into that. But as a business owner, what are you kind of yearning for? What kind of keeps you going every day?
so it might be helpful to give a bit of backstory because then it'll fold into
Yeah.
what happens. So the short version is I grew up with a belief that money equaled happiness. I went on a tangent to make as much money as I could as early as I could. Now I've got two very wealthy uncles. One's a billionaire, the other one's a multimillionaire. And I remember as a kid, Dad always just saying, well, they just got lucky. Now, even then, when I was a kid, I used to think, really? I don't know about that. And even now, I don't believe in luck. But what eventually happened was my dad worked in London, used to leave the house at 5 o'clock in the morning, get home at 7, 8 o'clock at night, and he would bring the stress and the frustration of his job home with him. And I vividly remember that as a youngster. And one day he was at home, and what had actually happened is he'd quitted his business, he quit his job in London that he hated to set up a business with one of my uncles. And I remember at that moment being like, yes, this is going to be it. Dad's going to be just like Uncle Steve. And Uncle Steve was like the life and soul of the party, and he had money and he was charismatic and all this stuff. And short version is that business never got going. My dad didn't have a job. I was the oldest of 4. My youngest sister was about 1 at the time. I was about 10. And then the only way I could describe it is my dad fell into experiencing feelings of depression. I remember things like wouldn't leave the house, slept in the separate room to my mum, curtain shut all day, all that kind of stuff. And then over time, my mum then went out and started working, which she didn't do before. So she wasn't there for me and my sisters, and obviously working multiple jobs just to keep a roof over their head, keep the mortgage paid, right? Do what you do. And then I just remember thinking, well, it's obvious, isn't it? Money equals happiness. Uncle Steve, multi-millionaire. Uncle Mark, billionaire, really happy. Dad, when he works in London, yes, he was stressed and frustrated, but he's not as happy as he is now. It's obvious money equals happiness. So I become that kid at school, buying and selling and ducking and diving, doing whatever I could to make money. Eventually started working in financial services. And my goal was I wanted to be a millionaire. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to make as much money as possible. And I was earning a lot of money relatively young. I mean, for context, this is nearly 20 years ago now, right? So you then work out, I don't know what it would be in today's money, but by the time I was in my late teens, I was making like 20 grand a month. This is 20 years ago. So 20 grand a month now is a lot of money. Back then,
See, I knew. So I think as well, like it makes it almost harder to interview someone and do a podcast with someone that you actually know a lot of the answers to. Because you want to ask probing questions that are like, so how much was you earning when you was in your teenage years? Because it's just you got the answers. We're going to carry on.
But ask me whatever you want. It's
No,
cool,
go on, crack on.
but so it was doing that, and then the way that happened was there was a guy in the office that I worked with, and kind of I don't really know where I got this idea from, but my thing was always, well, if there's certain people that are doing really well, I just need to learn what they're doing. So I vividly remember going to the people that were best in the office and sitting next to them going, I just want to watch you. Not like a weird stalker, but I just want to watch you and go, what are you doing? How are you doing that? Listen to what they're saying, seeing what they were doing differently. And I vividly remember one of the things at that point. So we used to have to send out brochures, and you would call people all day, speak to people, right? Yeah, we'll get a brochure, fine. And the people that were the underperformers, they would get someone, yeah, I want a brochure. And then they would go on their computer, type up the letter, which was a template letter. So put in the address and whatnot. And then they'd print it, and they'd walk to the printer, pick it up, go and get the envelope from the envelope cupboard, walk back, put it in, then walk to the post room, then come back and carry on. Now, if you're doing 10 of them a day, that's like 10 trips to the printer, 10 trips to the stationery room, and then these high performers, I'd sit next to them and they would go, yeah, I'll get the brochure out to you. Boof. Put the phone down, a piece of paper with the details to one side, and then straight on the phone and go again, and go again. And at the end of the day, they would do all of them at once. And rather than it take whatever, let's just say, let's say each time it took 3 minutes to do. Those 3 minutes, they would do 10 times a day initially. Whereas when they did it all at once, they could do all of them in 10 minutes. So they were saving 20 minutes, 20 minutes on the call. Well, you had 20 more minutes, 220 days a year, up that it all adds up, right? So it was things like that I was looking for, which now I understand, having trained in neurolinguistic programming, to be what we call modeling other people. And I did that, and basically I was making a lot of money. But what was really interesting was one of the guys once, he was there, the high performers, and he was reading this book, and I remember him reading this book to me, like almost like he was a priest. He sort of opened it up like the Bible and he read this passage from it. And I just remember like my eyes going, wow. And he was reading the book called The Secret. And then I read The Secret. And what was really interesting for me at that point was that I was like, I've been doing this my whole life, visualizing stuff from buying mini motos and petrol scooters as a kid and having these things. But I just never knew it was this thing. I just did it. And so that was my introduction to personal development. And then I just become obsessed. The more personal development I did, the more money I made. That carried on until one day I went to a Tony Robbins event in London and I had what I call my lightning moment. So short version is in this day, so it'll be 13 years ago this year that I had this lightning moment. There was a particular situation, cried my eyes out for 15 minutes and realized that my real driver was nothing to do with my dad. My real driver was never to do with money. It was never about money. It was to do with my dad and how my dad hadn't achieved certain things he was capable of. And I vowed in that moment, I don't want anyone else to go through the suffering that he went through and we went through. So very long-winded answer to your question, but what it comes back to is that from that moment on, I realized that success and achievement without fulfillment is a waste of time. And what I have done since is been obsessed with my personal North Star, which is my life mission, which is to empower people to transform excuses into results and live a life they love by mastering their mindset, their productivity and efficiency. We help people now unlock their next level of performance, purpose, and operating in that way enables people to raise their game. We unlock that potential. So potential, performance, and purpose are the three things that we help them do. So the short answer, having given all of that background, is what gets me going every day is knowing that every single day I'm waking up and I'm helping more people unlock their next level of potential, performance, and purpose.
And I think for those that are listening, this does not take away from Will being a formidable businessman, because it does take a certain amount of grit. No matter what realizations and that you have, it still have to get up every day and do it. But we'll touch on, because since working with you, there's a couple of questions I want to ask you, but since working with you, I've noticed in myself, I cannot move to the next level with my business until I move to the next level first. I've tried to do it so many times, and I've met a lot of business owners, some with bigger, more profitable businesses than myself, and they'll push the business, push it, and they push the people around them, but they haven't progressed themselves. And I think only if you've done that, you'll understand what I mean. And I think you understand quite well what I mean. And the people that you coach, I was sitting next to a guy last night, his name's David, and it seems like he's got his stuff together. He's got a great business, but he just wasn't sure what he wants to do with his business. I said, well, you just need to go sit with Will. I know, but I don't know. I don't know what I should ask him, and I don't know what I'm going there for. I went, that's why you need to go. Like, you can go, yeah. You go there, you're just going to get clarity. Whether it's, you might just turn around and go, do you know what? I want to become a mastic man, for the rest of my life. 350 quid a day contractor. I'd be super happy, super fulfilled, because they're two very different things, happiness and fulfillment. If you want to touch on that. He's like, do you know what? Yeah, I might give him a call. And I think he actually does your mortgages and insurance.
I know the guy you're talking about. Yeah, he does my insurance. Yeah.
So yeah, good guy. And I was kind of giving the sell on like the Will Polston touch and the masterminds.
I'll just slip you that $5 under the desk.
Yeah. I was like, make sure you put in my promo code. But no, it was all positive, and I think he's kind of gravitating towards it because he was quite new to it. But sort of touching on sort of the individual side of things, do you think there is something different about entrepreneurs and business owners?
Different. So
do you think there's something?
There is. I just want to touch on that thing that you were just saying about people not knowing what they want. So lots of people say, I don't know what I want. And I call bullshit on it always. Because where most people go wrong is they go, well, I don't know what I want because they can't think of the specific thing. But I think of finding what you want. There's a few ways that we do it. One of the ways is by working out exactly what you don't want. And believe it or not, if you're really struggling to work out what you want, starting with what you don't want is a really great place to start. Well, tell me what you don't want then. I don't want this, I don't want this, I don't want this. And then that in itself is almost the polar opposite of those things, gives us a glimpse into what that would be. Another way of working out what you want is playing with it. So playing with it and going, well, let's take away all of the restrictions. Because so many people, they don't allow themselves to play and be creative and work out what they want because of the construct of beliefs that they have of what's possible for them. There's a huge difference between what is probable and what is possible. And if you just start with, well, what's possible? Anything's possible as long as it's humanly possible. It fits within the laws of science, if you like, the universal laws that things can be done. And if we take away the restrictions of time, of health, of money, and also know-how. So a lot of people is they go, well, I just don't know how to do it, so I can't do that. Well, no, we can just learn how to do it. Any problem is simply an unasked or unanswered question. And if we ask the right questions to the right person, things can be solved super quickly. So yeah, that is something that people can work through. And one of the things that I did with my book, I wrote a book called North Star Thinking, is that I attempted to make that book to be something that if people went through that book from cover to cover and did every exercise, and all the exercises in the workbook, they don't even need a coach. They don't need, if they do that. It wasn't here's the book and then sign up for my program for $997 to get the really juicy bits. We did that. So in answer to your question, what makes entrepreneurs and business owners different? I mean, there's a few things. One of the major things that I come across, some people in business will do things because they're really money driven and they see they can get more money. A lot of people do it from a place of freedom. And they don't like being told what to do, so they like the freedom to be able to do what they want to do. And then some people do it purely from a place of purpose and passion. And they're so committed to wanting to do something in a sustainable way. The only option is that they do it for themselves. So they're kind of the three main things that I will see. But ultimately, it links back to people's values and what is important to them as to what they decide that they want to do.
Definitely, yeah. Because that's kind of why I asked that question of, do you think there's something that sets entrepreneurs apart? And now, sitting in a room with, like, the dinner last night, I would go, yes, these people are different. I don't think they're necessarily inherently wired different. A few of them definitely are. But I think it's kind of like perspective and to what kind of level you hold yourself. So I can hear the doorbell ringing in the background. I think it's kind of like the actions, and a big part of that is the accountability as well, which of course is, I'm sure, touched on in North Star Thinking. Now, I've actually recommended North Star Thinking to probably 10 different people. I think I bought quite a few copies off yourself to hand out to people. One of my colleagues, she's obsessed with it now. She's got she uses an actual sort of North Star tracker, and she does a happiness monitor every month religiously, and sort of sees massive benefits in it. Is there like one particular thing in North Star Thinking or your beliefs that you think is just absolutely crucial, not just for business owners, but anyone to latch onto and just try? What's an easy thing they could try?
It starts with, well, what's the North Star? What's the mission that we're working on? So I regard it as a life mission. Like I said, my life mission is to empower people to transform excuses into results and live the life they love. And we do that by helping them unlock their next level of potential performance and purpose. And the thing when, for me, that's the most important, mate. It's the foundational piece, because there's a lot of people that I meet in business that are trying to climb a ladder really fast. And some of them are doing it really fast, only that they realize that the ladder they're climbing is on the wrong wall. And that's why doing that piece of work first is so important. There's a great scene in Alice in Wonderland where Alice walks up to the Cheshire Cat. The Cheshire Cat's in the tree and says to the Cheshire Cat, well, which way shall I go? There's a fork in the road. And the Cheshire Cat says, well, where do you want to go? And she says, well, I don't know. And he says, well, take any route, it'll get you there. So starting by knowing what we really want, what we truly want, not what we believe is possible, but what we actually want, and working towards that in some way or another. I'm not saying you've got to drop everything and pick it up the next day, but working towards that, because what that enables you to do is create alignment. And so many people are not aligned. They're incongruent. They're living incongruently. So their actions and intentions are not aligned. And at the start, that's okay. It's a bit like if we decided to travel from Southampton to New York via plane, we're going to jump in the plane and take off. If you're just 1 degree out when you just take off from Southampton, it's not going to make that much of a difference. But we then extend that across the Atlantic, and you're going to end up in a completely different place. And the further out you go, the bigger that gap becomes. And that gap is frustration.
It's a readjustment, isn't it?
Yep.
It's the constant readjustments and checking. And I found that I drift off if I don't constantly, well, I say constantly, if I don't regularly just kind of touch in, review. And this is why I've kind of re-signed up again to the inner circle. I didn't necessarily need the intense mastermind setting, but just having Pippa, which is Will's colleague, she texted me again this morning. Well done, Frankie. Well done for filling out a silly little form that takes 5 minutes. Here's a pat on the back and a little bit of kind of reassurance. And that for me is worth the money in itself, because I don't need, I said to Pippa the other day, I was like, I don't need the motivation to get up and sort of start a new company or take over the world or anything like that. It's like, I'm doing that. God forbid, do I have to do some chores, fill out a bit of paperwork, eat breakfast or 3 meals a day? Because they're the things that get pushed aside. So I'll still be alive if I don't do them. The main important stuff can still happen. And all of a sudden it starts falling to pieces. Like, I haven't seen my girlfriend in days. I haven't had a good night's sleep. I haven't sort of looked after myself. And they are important to me. Like the silly little things, they are going on my North Star. Because they're not silly little things. Like going to the gym X amount of times per week. On my North Star is to be happy, healthy, in good shape, and just look after myself. So if I'm not doing that, then I'm not living in line with my North Star. So do it, basically. Like it's as simple as that. And that's how I explain it to people, is whatever you put on there isn't necessarily like, right, once you've decided it, you're going to die with it, because it can obviously change and your goals have eventually changed, your North Star can change. But if you get up each morning and you're doing something that doesn't align with what you assume makes you fulfilled and happy in the long run, well, then stop doing it. It's not aligned with who you are and what you want. Whereas if you're kind of getting up, you're making them moves, making them decisions, and then doing them actions that do align with what you believe you want, well, then hopefully you're living each day happily and fulfilled, and you are moving towards that greater goal. All right, you might not achieve everything, because like you famously say, it's like emptying the sea with a spoon. That's how your North Star should be. But I think it's a great way to live. And when I think that was probably the reason I was like, I need to speak to this guy, because of your talk at the Bitter X event. It's like, this aligns with what I want. It didn't feel like you were selling to me. I just felt sold. It's like, this aligns with how I want to operate, because I was very much not operating the way I probably should have been, or at least not living the way I believed I should have been.
Yeah, I think of like, success is subjective, right? Everyone's got their own definition of success. If you're a professional athlete, success is maybe qualifying for a particular event. For some people, success is finishing top 3 or getting into the final. That in itself is success. It isn't always about winning. If you're really into physique, success is getting to a particular body fat size or whatever that might be. Success in business might be having made a certain impact, made a certain amount of profit, whatever. People's definition of success is different. If in relationships, it might be to want to spend time with that person. The amount of people I know in relationships that don't want to spend time with their partners and whatnot. Anyway, so when we think about success, which is subjective, success is just a lot of small things done well day after day and doing them consistently and being consistent. And what I realized is that studying lots and lots of stuff, I'm an obsessive learner. From the ancient wisdom that I learned right through to the more new age stuff, and from neurolinguistic programming to different elements of psychology. If people want a result, it really boils down to 3 things: having absolute clarity of where they are, absolute clarity of where they want to go, taking intelligent action. What do I mean by intelligent action? Intelligent action that's aligned with your values and that's aligned with the trajectory that you've mapped for yourself, and then having active accountability to ensure that that happens. If you don't have clarity, you're lost, a bit like the chap you were talking about earlier. If you have clarity, but you're not taking intelligent action now, again, keywords intelligent, because lots of people are taking action, but it's ineffective action as opposed to intelligent action. And that leads to frustration. And then you have people that are lost, overwhelmed, or frustrated. So the frustration also comes in when you're taking action, but you haven't got the accountability to make sure you're doing what it is that you want to be doing and making sure that's happening. So yeah, so lost, overwhelmed, and frustrated is intelligent action. Then the last piece is procrastinating. So lots of people will procrastinate. They will not do the things they know they want to do them. So they have clarity of their goals. They know the action they should be taking, but the reason they don't take it is because they don't have active accountability. And that's where we ensure that we create that accountability loop to make sure that people are doing it. And often what we attempt to do as well is, rather than using the carrot or the stick, of, oh, there's your reward. I appreciate you said people giving you the pat on the back. That might felt like the reward, or the stick of having to grill someone or put punishments in place if they haven't done it. More often than not, we're just getting them to readjust as to the reason why they want to do it in the first place. Or if they're really not doing it, then actually we realize it's not aligned and we just remove it, because it shouldn't be on there.
Definitely. 100%. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been involved in your stuff for a while now, and I've heard it before. Some of the stuff you say, it's not necessarily stuff you've made up. It's actually quite well documented, a lot of the things you've researched and put into North Star thinking as well, isn't it? But what it does is stitches it all together. because there's a few books, The Secret being one of them, is talking about manifesting and how you manifest it, and it turns into it. But then that's a small part of North Star thinking. And then there's is it Mo Gawdat? Say his name, isn't it? What's his book?
Soul for Happy.
Soul for Happy. I read that. I think you gave that to me. Fantastic book. You've incorporated like quite a chunk of like them philosophies into yours and stitched them all together in such a nice way. So no, it's
Well, this is the thing that what I attempt to do. I am not trying to be the sage from the stage, you know, the one that knows it all. But I want to be the guide by your side. I don't want people to be like, oh, Will, like this, he's got this mystical, amazing ability. Like, I haven't. I just learn. I just love learning. A couple of the people you mentioned there. So The Secret is a book that interviewed or researched 36 different people. It was originally made into a film. 36 people took that and turned it into the book. That wasn't Rhonda's information. The book that she actually read, the first book that she refers to, is when I read this first book, and it gave me the big insight. But was a book. So she found that book, and then she just shared it in a slightly different way that people liked. So the Science of Getting Rich was the book by Wallace D. Wattles, and that was, and then there's variations to other books that she read. There's Think and Grow Rich, a personal development book that many people have read. But what was it? Well, it was the life of Andrew Carnegie and talking about what he did. And Mo Gawdat, great book, Soul for Happy. A lot of what he's talking about is Buddhism. You know, it's lots of myself and other people. We're just learning. Take Tony Robbins, great example. Tony Robbins' mentor was a guy that he learned from lots of different people, and he originally took on neurolinguistic programming. Neurolinguistic programming was created by Richard Bandler and John Grindler, but they took NLP from Virginia Satir, who was a world-class family therapist at the time, and Milton Erickson, who was basically the first ever hypnotherapist.
Improving on what's already been researched
and repackaging it or showing it in a different way. But that for me is the bit that I've become very interested in years gone by, is that if I find someone I like, I then look at who they learned from. So you take a Tony Robbins. Tony Robbins' mentor was a guy called Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn's mentor was El Shoaff. We can go all the way back to ancient wisdom, and then you had Socrates.
Yeah.
Socrates taught Plato. Plato taught Aristotle. Plato and Aristotle were students of Socrates. That's why Socrates is regarded as the founding father of coaching, really, and personal development. So it's fascinating.
I've seen your list of recommended books, and they're fantastic. But if I had to put you on the spot and say, recommend me 3 books, one for, let's say, someone who's a bit lost, not necessarily a business owner, someone's a bit lost, someone looking to build a business, and I'll tell you can throw in a wild card of another book you think everyone should read.
But before I do that, let me do something else, because I think a lot of people, when they read books ineffectively. And I'm all about efficiency and effectiveness, right? So the most important book that someone should ever read or listen to. So I actually don't read that. Oh, I do, I suppose. I probably get through about 50 books a year, but I appreciate this is a lot, but in terms of the context, I probably only physically read about 8 to 10 hard copy books a year. The rest are audio books.
Yep.
And in today's day and age, it doesn't necessarily have to be books. It can be podcasts. It can be YouTube videos. The reason I like a book is because a book typically is someone's life's work of decades condensed into a few hundred pages. So you get the best. Whereas on a podcast, you're going to get little sound bites as opposed to getting the depth. So anyway, I digress slightly, because the best book you should read is the one that is solving your biggest burning hair problem or challenge you have right now, as opposed to me going, well, this book and this book and this book are all amazing. Find the one that's going to solve the problem or give you the idea that you're looking for. So the questions were, what's the best book if you're lost?
Yep, best book if you're lost, needing some clarity.
Lost in life?
I suppose so, yeah. I mean, I've been in that position before, and there's been certain books, podcasts, or even videos that just...
I'm really mindful of what I'm about to say. I would say North Star thinking, and I wouldn't just say it just for the sake of it, but genuinely do believe that that's the case, which is mine. But to give another one would probably be, people are really lost, I would probably say Inspired Destiny by Dr. John Demartini is one that is the first one that came to mind.
Soul for Happy was quite a good book for me, I found. To kind of like double down on what you just said about read the book that's specifically relevant to your situation, I couldn't echo that enough. Because there's some books, even also when I'm in a good place and everything's flowing and everything, it's not something I necessarily need to read. If I'm doing it and I'm living by it, then I don't need that refresher. But there'll be like a business problem that I'm really struggling with at the time. For example, at the moment, something that's just kind of clicks. We're at that next stage, ready to kind of go into the next sort of level of business. And something that I haven't read previously because I didn't need to is a book called Second in Command. Yep. I don't know if you've read that, but fantastic. I think it might have been recommended in the group potentially. Fantastic book for me at the moment, and I'm getting well into it.
Yeah. So you said the best business book for someone to start a business. So if someone's looking to start a business and wants to just get going, it depends on the stage that they're at, whether so we're going to make the assumption they've already decided on what the business is, or they don't know what the business is and want to start one.
I'll tell you what, because I think some of our peers and friends and a lot of business owners, they're talking about like taking a business and then scaling up. I think we should maybe take it back to someone listening, for example, Jack, our editor and sort of sound engineer guy. He's trying to start a business from scratch, from zero. No funding, nothing. He's employed. He's got a job. It's pretty comfortable, but he used to work for NatWest and hated it. Like, he hated the corporate structure, the ladder, the red tape, everything about it. Everything bubble wrapped. He could not wait to get out. And he says, like, breath of fresh air. But then he's looking to kind of go to the next step. He's like, right, I want the freedom. I want sort of the freedom of location, the freedom of money, freedom of time, and also just the fun of it, I think, as well. So for that person there that's not quite sure how to make the jump,
I would probably say, if we're talking books as opposed to my advice, my book suggestion would probably be Entrepreneur Revolution by Daniel Priestley would be one that comes to mind. I think the one if someone's really looking at get going, let's face it, what's the difference between a hobby and a business? The difference between a hobby and a business is a hobby is something you pay to do. A business is something you get paid to do. Now, I love the work that I do. I literally get paid to do what I love every day. So, but it's a business, right? I'm not paying, I'm getting paid. So then, well, what's that difference? The first one is getting your first customers. And what tends to happen is most people is that they speak to someone and say, what should I do? I need to get my first customer. And they go, oh, go to a networking event or go and do this. Now, knowing what I know now is that actually the best thing that someone can do is really get clear on who their ideal client is and the message. So market, message, medium. What's the market? Who's the demographic? What's the psychic graphic? And then what's the medium? What's the best way of communicating to those people? A great book for that is called The Ultimate Marketing Plan by Dan Kennedy, which will enable people to work out what they want. Because if you decide that you want to start a fitness business, for example, and we say, right, well, what do you want to do? We need to get you making a certain amount of money as quickly as possible. And I'll touch on that as well in a second. Then we've decided, well, who do we want to work with that are most likely to pay us the amount of money that we want to earn and that I'm going to most enjoy working with, and I can prove that I can get a result for. Then once we've established who those people are, we've got to be able to communicate that effectively, and it's easier than ever thanks to ChatGPT and another AI to do that. And then it's the medium. What's the medium that we're most likely to get in front of those people? Now, the medium is also dependent on resource, because if you've got no money, well, it's really going to be conversation, asking people, maybe doing some spending time rather than spending money, going and networking, or social media, creating content, and if you're going to create content, then the other book would be, so this is what I'm thinking, like, it's almost like a beginner's guide to starting a business. What are the books? Entrepreneur Revolution, The Ultimate Marketing Plan, and then probably They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. Just those three alone will probably give more people an understanding of what they could do to make their business startup a success. I think that based on the books that I've read, as I'm sitting here right now off the top of my head, it would be those. Now, the one other thing that I will say that's helpful, I find, because you said why people don't do it, like fear of failure and what if it doesn't work. Most people think binary. What do I mean by most people think binary? Most people think it's this or it's this. When you've got one option, you've got no option. When you've got two options, you've got a dilemma. When you've got three or more options, you've got choice. So we can, as long as we've got two options, we can always make a third option, because we can make a hybrid of those two. We can join them together and come up with one. So when it comes to making and starting your business, most people, generally speaking, are earning an amount of money, and I appreciate it can be different, but let's just work on the basis that you're established at what you do. Like Jack, I think you said, was working in that West, earning a certain amount of money. As you get older, typically speaking, you're earning more money. So you've become accustomed to a certain lifestyle as well in terms of what you're doing. So then the idea of then taking that jump of earning the most amount of money, you've increased your lifestyle to a coordinate, and then going to zero is like, how do I do that?
Just say to people, do it sooner rather than later.
Right. And I disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I disagree. I disagree with just quit the job and start. What I think by this is actually we do the numbers and we go, practically speaking, I'm going to use numbers just to give some context. Let's say that you're earning $4,000 a month, right? Before tax, but let's just call it $4,000 for argument's sake at the moment. You're earning $4,000 and that enables you to have dinners out every week and have a couple of holidays a year, or have a holiday a year, have some real nice luxuries, go and buy clothes and whatever. So you've got a lifestyle budget. Then you work out what's your survival budget. So what do I need to have to be able to pay the rent, pay the mortgage, put food on the table, not necessarily live out of a can of beans, but we're not having loads of luxuries, right? So let's say that for argument's sake, that works out to be 1,500 quid, right? That's the bare necessities. Then we go, right, let's say the customer, we can work out that we could get a customer paying us £300 a month for whatever it is that we're going to be doing. What we're going to do is our part-time business. I always use the term part-time business rather than side hustle, because it's a mindset thing. If it's a part-time business for it becomes full-time rather than it's just this thing on the side. If you think of being in a relationship, do you ever want to be someone's bit on the side? No, you don't, right? You want to be someone that you're either with them. So we don't want to have the bit on the side. We're going to have the part-time business, and what we're going to do is we're going to work before our main job, before and after, for a period of time and weekends to build up those clients, whilst earning $4,000, living to 1,500, putting some money to a side, so that then we can do one or two things. We either build up a bank that means we can take the leap and go full time, but even then, I would encourage people to wait until they've got their survival budget covered and then take the jump, because at that point, they've built up to their survival budget, in this instance, £1,500, knowing that they can survive on that. Plus, hopefully, because of the way that they've lived their lifestyle in the months prior, they've built up a bit of cash reserve just in case. And then they can have the belief, well, now if I've been able to do this working part-time 10, 15 hours a week, imagine what I could do if I was doing 40 hours a week. And then what happens is the trajectory of getting back up to that lifestyle budget happens much quicker. That's how I think most people should do it, because it removes the fear and enables you to progress much faster.
Yeah, that I agree with. I mean, I didn't do it that way. I actually kind of took the lead and I got out a lot quicker than
Neither did I.
Yeah.
But I've learned the challenges from that. And now I'm wiser, and I would have done it in a different way.
Yeah, rewinding the clock, even if I took an extra 3 months just to kind of gradually phase over, it would have been so much easier. But also as well, I think it would have made me a bit too comfortable, potentially. Like I didn't have a choice, like it had to work. I'd put all of my we touched on my little story in the first kind of episode that we recorded. I think it's been released. But I had a car on finance, to which I had, I think, 15 or 17 grand finance owed. Probably owed still 13 on it. And I sold the car for 10. So I was negative like 3 grand straight away. But I didn't pay the 10 grand back off of the loans. And then I just kind of like put that into the business and just thought, well, hopefully I'll get some jobs come in and I'll just put a bit of money aside to sort of pay the loan repayment every month. And all right, I'm not recommending it, but it worked. It's like we're here 7.5 years later, the loan's well and truly paid off, and we're in the green. But no, it is a scary thing, but it was so much fun.
You said a wild card book as well. So the wild card book that I would say to someone, can I pick 3? That's right. So much. You had time to think about the wild card books. The wild card books for me are As a Man Thinketh by James Clear. Not James Clear, sorry.
Atomic Habits by James Clear.
Atomic Habits, but no, it's James Allen. Sorry. So it's As a Man Thinketh by James Allen is one of them. Another one is The Diamond Cutter, and another one would be, that I just think is an incredible book, would probably be Soul for Happy. I love Soul for Happy. So it comes back to what's fascinating is that as we develop and grow, I've just started re-listening to a book, or just finished re-listening to a book that I last read about 7 years ago called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And what's fascinating is that you can reread a book and take something different every time. The Secret, which was the first personal development book I ever read, I have read that every summer for 15 years. I reread it every year. Part of me, it's a nostalgia thing. Do I get anything new from it? Sometimes I see little nuances. But what's fascinating is when you reread a book, you as an individual are typically in a different place. So you get a completely different perspective. It's the same words on the pages, but you just gloss over things. You don't see what you don't see. There's a little tiny part of our brain called the reticular activating system, which is the part of our brain that enables us to focus. We've all had a situation where you wanted a particular item of clothing or a handbag or a car, and you're like, oh, I really want that. No one's got that. You get it, and all of a sudden you see it everywhere. That's because of your reticular activating system. And what happens is that we find ourselves in situations where when we're looking for something, then we see it. Dan Sullivan has an amazing quote, which is, your eyes only see and your ears only hear what you're looking for. So when we get focused, right, what do I want from this book? What do I want to get from it? And then we're more likely to find it because we've essentially programmed our subconscious to look for it.
It's like that thing. It's like you know what you know, then there's some things you know what you don't know, and then there's stuff that you just don't know what you don't know. And the percentages are off the chart. Like we look around in this room, it's like, yeah, I know about this. I know about podcasting. I've seen it. I know about cameras. I know about a glass of water. And then you're like, okay, there's someone there that has spent 20 or 30 years of their life developing how that glass was made. Like they know more about that glass than you do, and where it comes from and how it was made and the temperature. And then you kind of realize, actually, I don't know anything about it. And that is true for everything, like business, life, health, fitness, food, podcasting, like you name it. And I think the more you kind of delve into something, the wiser you get, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, I think it was an Albert Einstein quote, which is something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing, is the more I learn, the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know, or something to that effect. But it's so true. You know, there is so much that's going on. But this is the thing that I think is really interesting, is that there's so much stuff we just use every single day that we don't have to learn. How many people listen to this right now at some point today already, at the point of them listening to it, have turned on a light switch, but have absolutely no idea how electrics work? You don't need to know how everything works. You just need to know what to do to get the outcome you want. I want the light on. I want light in this room. I've got to turn the light on. Once we learn that part, then the rest is, I could go to university and study electrics, and I could work out exactly how to wire this light and do all of this stuff. But why do I need to do that if all I want is the light on? Just find out what I need to flick the switch, and I've got the outcome I want.
Yeah, it's true. Actually, you know what? It's good. It's a good time to drop it in. On the topic of things we don't know, Jack has kindly prepared some cups for us. Yeah. We're calling this segment of the show One Guest, Two Cups.
Where'd you get that inspiration from, Frankie?
What are you laughing at? It's original. We made this one up. So I probably know one or two of the questions in the cups. We've got a red cup or a blue cup. I'm pretty sure the blue cup is just more vanilla, what's on the sheet kind of thing. And then a red cup is hopefully stuff you don't know, or stuff we can maybe try and catch you out on, or stuff listeners or friends want to know.
Well, for the purpose of everyone that is listening to this and that can't see it visually, I just want to point out that at this point, Frankie, something I didn't know about Frankie, he's also colorblind, because the cup is turquoise, which is arguably a little bit blue, and then the other one is orange. So
that's pink. It's a pink.
So if you didn't know, Frankie is definitely colorblind.
Change the lights. Turn the lights down over. So yeah, that's all. So we got.
I've got a bristle. I pick, do I?
I don't know how we do this. This is a new.
What are the instructions, Jack?
What's the main? Say pick one question from each cup. So there should be two questions in each cup. One more vanilla, one different.
Okay.
You can ask me a second if you want as well. I think I've got to answer something. You can ask me something to answer.
Okay, let's do this then. So
you can write a test subject for it.
How's in there? So how many's in? Would you want to? Wait, you crack on. You crack on.
Okay, so I'm gonna read it and answer it.
Yeah, go on then.
Okay, so I'll start with the vanilla one in the turquoise cup. Okay, so
put it on the list to get some blue and red cups.
What's a belief you once pushed hard that you've since changed your mind on? Oh, I sort of was telling people about it and whatnot.
It's something that you was adamant about, just always on your mind, telling people in conversations, but now you've got the insight into it. You're thinking, actually, I don't agree with that anymore.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So one of the ones, this actually came up the other day, which I thought was really interesting. And it's in relation to trauma. And as you kind of go into the world of personal development, there's layers to it, right? You start off, it's the kind of the surface level personal development. It's things like goal setting and taking action and things like that. And then there's layers to personal development. And one of the things that I used to hear people talk about was ancestral trauma and how you can have beliefs from grandparents and things like that of they experienced trauma and it's passed on to you. And I used to go, what a load of absolute bollocks. Like, there is no way that is the case. You're born, you have a fresh brain, like everything you learn throughout the time. There's no way. That's just someone coming up with this bullshit excuse around what's going on. And then one day I had a realization, which was something that I think we would all agree on, is that if you are a biological child of someone or grandchild of someone, there is a likelihood that you are going to have some physical characteristics of them. So you might look like your dad or look like your mum or look like your granddad, or whatever, have the same nose, the same ears, or whatever that might be. And it just dawned on me one day that if every bit of information that we ever have is stored as a cell, now bearing in mind every single one of us started off as one cell and then it became 2 cells and then 4 cells and 8 cells and so on and so forth. If all of that information and trauma, which is a perception, trauma is a belief. So when people think about trauma, which is I had the car crash or I had the experience, whatever it might be, that people will class in trauma. Trauma is never the thing that happened. It's always the perception of the thing that happened and the emotions that are linked to that. And that gets stored at a cellular level and that can be passed on. And that was when I thought, wow. And there's some studies around this that was done with mice years ago, and mice and cherry blossoms. So what happened was that they took mice, and let's take the moral element out of this for the moment and just look at it for the scientific experiment that it was. What they do is they took mice and they got them to smell cherry blossom, but every time as they smelt the cherry blossom, they electrocuted them. Cherry blossom electrocution, blah, 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 blah. And what it did is it created a pattern, it created a belief that then 2 generations later, so the grandchildren of the mice that this originally happened to would not go near the cherry blossom.
Wow, that's powerful.
So that's something that I changed my mind on.
So that's proof. I mean, yeah, because as well, like I also think as well, like you are a product of your environment, and that whether or not is passed down genetically, I think probably that proves part of it is, but also your environment and who you spend time with and how you spend time with them and what it's kind of like a learnt belief. It's a different thing, but
It's definitely, yeah, without a doubt. More of us learn from what so we've got 5 senses, right? Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, which is basically touch, feel, olfactory, which is smell, and gustatory, which is taste. But the majority of our learning is done through 3 of our senses, which is visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Most people are visual learners. So as kids, and I always find it hilarious when you see little kids, just as they've started talking, like 2-3 years old, and they will say things that they've obviously heard a parent say. That's a very adult thing to say, but they say it anyway, and you just instantly know that's where they've got it from because they've just observed. And I think of a new, let's call it a new brain, like a sponge. So let's say you go to Halfords, you get a sponge. Now, if I take that sponge and I put it in a blue bucket, not a turquoise bucket, a blue bucket full of water that has got blue food dye in it, and I took that sponge and I just dipped it in, and then I took it out, that blue sponge is going to get blue water soaked right through it. It's going to go all the way through. If I now took it out and I put it in a red bucket, not an orange bucket, a red one with red dye, and I dipped it in, it's likely the outside of the sponge might appear red, but if I cut it in half and opened it up, it's still going to be blue at its core and then red on the outside. And I think of a lot of learning that happens like that. So in answer to what you were saying, yeah, a huge amount of what we learn is just passed on until there is someone who does the personal development work to unlearn. So much of personal development growth comes from unlearning. I believe that peak performance is equal to, peak performance is equal to your potential minus interference. So much of that interference isn't even our own interference. It's previous interference. It's past beliefs that we've just adopted and taken on for years and years and years. There's a great metaphor, is a story of a girl that was cooking with her mum. And she used to watch her mum cook, and the mother would always cut the chicken in a particular way and then put it in the pan. And then her daughter learned and cut the chicken in a particular way. And then one day her daughter then asked and said, why do you always cut the chicken like that when you put it in the pan? And she said, I don't know. That's just the way we've always done it. It's the way I learned from my mum. And then all of the family was still alive. So then she said, well, okay, I'm going to go. So she went and then asked her grandmother, why do you always cut the chicken and put it in a particular way? And she didn't know. So she went and asked her, then her basically great nan, why do you always cut the chicken like this? She said, because we only ever had a small pan. You know, that they had a small saucepan, and they had to cut the chicken that way to be able to get it in. But everybody's just follows the whole way down the line. They've never questioned why it was done in that particular way.
I've heard that story before. When I started my business, I didn't tell one or two certain family members, I won't mention on there, not because I didn't trust them, not because I didn't think they'd, believe in me or support me. It's just that they'd never done anything like it. It was scary to them. The thought of it was scary. And I know they would have tried to talk me down off the ledge. Like, no, I'll just stick with what you're doing for a little bit. Why don't you? And I didn't need it. I need to sort of think for myself. I need to make my own path. I need to kind of just sort of split off from the norm, essentially, be that 1%.
I had another one. This is a really recent one for me as well. When I was born, I was allergic to egg and all dairy products. I grew up on soy milk. And then as I got a bit older, I realized I was allergic to nuts and also shellfish. So my whole life, as far as I'm concerned, from my whole being aware, because I think when they first discovered that I was allergic to egg, I was like 3 months old or whatever, and dairy. So for as long as I can ever remember, I've been allergic to eggs, nuts and shellfish my whole life. Now, I semi-regularly have allergic reactions to nuts. Really, really mild ones, but probably once every 2 years. I've had 2 really bad ones in 20 years, but that will happen every couple of years. I'll accidentally eat something or whatever. I'll have a really mild reaction. Same with shellfish. Every now and then, something accidentally mild, not too bad. Eggs, so I just go, well, every now and then it happens. But because I've been so conditioned saying I'm allergic to eggs, nuts and shellfish, that happens. Anyway, I've just started this with this new PT. We were just talking about it when we come online. And one of the things that I've always really struggled with is breakfast. Because when you're allergic to egg, having a healthy breakfast is really difficult. There's not that many things you can actually eat that are really high protein. It's like mainly carbs, right? So, and I thought, do you know what? I might just, because I'm allergic to raw eggs, so I can have cakes because it's cooked properly, but there'll be times when it's a bit risky. So things like pancakes, if it's a well done pancake, like crepe style pancake, I can have it. But if it was a bit too runny, then
like a runny scrambled egg, a bit risky.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought, do you know what? I'm going to test it. So I had scrambled egg and I had it really well done on Sunday just once, like, what's that, 5 days ago? And I didn't die. And I was like, wow, but how long has that been the case? And then I had it again yesterday and the day before. So all of a sudden,
do you know what?
it's a belief that I've had.
I'm going to ruin it because one of the questions I was asked last night when I was doing my research, they was like, yeah, put that question in the pot. It's like, why are you no longer allergic to eggs? That's one of the questions.
But this is it, right? So the but why is because I've tested the assumption my whole life. Now, obviously, I didn't do it completely blind. I looked at it and went, make sure it's really well done. I'm going to test it. I did some research and I made sure I looked, and whatever it is, like 80% of children that are allergic to raw egg have grown out of it by the time they're like 15 or something. But I've just never tested the assumption until now.
Making revelations.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Have I got to do the red one now?
You haven't got. It's up to you. It's up to you.
I'll go risky. I like a bit of risk. Let's speed it up.
Well, I mean, if it is the egg question, then
There's how you question the other one. Egg question. He's got to pick another one.
Why are you now no longer allergic to eggs? Well, that's that one gone. So that's who was it that said that?
That's John.
What John?
Pocknell.
Oh, right. Yeah.
He's like, just ask Will why he's no longer. I think he didn't understand, or else he didn't listen in one of your talks.
What happened the last time I drank alcohol? Ah, so was this suggested by someone you're on a table with last night as well? Well, it might have been.
So for the record, I haven't heard the story either.
So
You're completely in the dark. You can make something up.
it's not technically. I because I know who's now suggested that question, but it's not the actual thing that happened, but it kind of is the same. So I stopped drinking in 28 years ago this year.
How are you feeling for it?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good. But what actually happened was I've had this bit of a weird relationship with alcohol for years. So I have never really been a regular drinker in the sense of every night come home, have a beer. I can count on one hand the amount of time I've come home and cracked open a beer. I was very much a binge drinker, go out Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night, have big nights out. And then what happened as we fast forwarded from that was that my nights out would get more expensive. I would black out, not remember everything, feel like crap the next day, and it was just really having an effect on me. And then I decided there was a particular situation that was going on, something I wanted to achieve by the time I was 30. I realized that it wasn't happening as fast as I would like, and I just put alcohol down to that because for me it was Groundhog Week. I would go out on a Friday, Saturday, feel crap on Monday. I feel 60%, 70% by Tuesday, 80% by Wednesday, about 100% again by Thursday, and then do it all again, right? So the level of productivity in my whole week was really low. And then I said, nope, I'm going to do it. So I decided I'd give myself a challenge, and I would give up alcohol for the year. And the bit that you're talking to in relation to this question, because I didn't ask the question, was that I went out for dinner with my mum and dad for my birthday on a Friday night. The week before, we were going to go out for a bit of dinner.
How old was you at this point? Was this
So
it was 7, 8 years ago?
28.
28, same age as me then.
And my parents said they were going to take me out for dinner on a Friday night. We're going to go meet some of my family for dinner in Chelmsford. Great, yeah, cool. Where are we going? And my assistant that worked for me at the time, for a private party for me. And I'd load my friends there. The person who suggested this question, she being one of them. And then we had a night out. The wheels come off, and it was a crazy night. I woke up at his house with a bunch of others that all had this crazy night out, and I don't remember anything. And what was happening more often was that I would not only have these crazy nights out, but I would act a prat, and then the next day have loads of fear around it and shame and anxiety, yeah, like beer fit. But then that next night he was going. There was a TV program called The Housewives of Cheshire or something.
Who's this?
TV show. So there's Towie, and then I'm sure it's called The Housewives of Cheshire. And this particular friend of the person that suggested this question was in this show, and they were having this big party at this big mansion house. And I woke up that morning and I'm still drunk, and he said, "We're going there." I said, "Oh, I'll come." So we got his driver to take us back to my house. We got changed, and then we went up to Manchester or wherever it was that we were having this big party. Got there, big mansion house, drinking, crazy party. And it was a house party on steroids. But then all of a sudden there was, there's DJ in the living room, smoke machines, there's a drag queen and all sorts. And there's a photo of me completely drunk, cuddled up to this drag queen and all this mad stuff. And I woke up the next day, I was like, oh my God, I feel like terrible. And I remember having a coaching session with my coach that week and going, I feel like terrible and this is going on. And then later that week was my 29th birthday, right? So I was going to turn 29. And that's when, and he was saying, well, what else could you do? And coaching me through the process. I said, well, I don't want to give up forever because I'm really fearful of, I love drinking and it's going to ruin my social life and yada, 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 all these things. And he said, well, what else could you do? And I said, well, I could give up for a month, but I've done that loads of times. It never works. He goes, well, what else could you do? I said, well, I could give up for 3 months, but I don't think it'd get me the result. And he said, well, how long do you think, if you gave 100% and you were fully committed to being 100%, do you think you could get this achieved in what period of time? I said, about a year. He said, would you be willing to give up alcohol for the year? And I went, yeah, I would. That was the decision made. So that's what they're talking about there. That wasn't the last time I drank alcohol, though. What happened then, similar-ish sort of thing, was that I then did the year and was loving it. And whilst I did the year, I then went on a stag do to Marbella. And I went to Marbella and I met this amazing girl. I was single at the time, really liked her. She was a couple of years older than me. And we got on like a house on fire. I wasn't drinking on this stag do. And she said, and we were really getting on. Anyway, a couple of months later after we come back, we're dating, seeing each other regularly. Now, she had an ex who basically was a nightmare when they were drunk, and a nightmare in the sense of a bit abusive. And she was at the point where she was a couple of years older than me. So she's about 31 and wanting to have kids. So there's a biological clock. And she was saying, well, look, what I'm worried about is that if we're going to get serious, like, I want to have kids, things are going to happen. I don't want to get 5 years into this relationship. You decide you want to drink alcohol again and then you're a knobhead. And I went, fair. So I said, well, look, I've done my year now. I could probably have a few drinks. I can show her. And we went out on this date I remember it was Halloween. It was the 31st of October. And we went to London and we went to a comedy show and I had a couple of beers. And I had a couple of beers and I wasn't a knob and whatnot. And we got to the night and she goes, well, I've been really giving this some thought. No, it's not for me. Now, I was annoyed at that point, partly because I did really like her. But secondly, I was like, I just drunk alcohol for you. I didn't say this to her, but I remember feeling, Now, the reality is I've never done it for her. I was doing it for me because I perceived what I was going to get from it, but I wasn't living congruently with my values because really I didn't want to drink alcohol. Anyway, I thought, well, I've had a couple of beers. I wasn't a knob, wasn't too bad. Let's see how I get on. So I had a few nights out where I'd have like a beer and drive and whatnot. And I had 2 big nights out that December. I had a night out with a friend, crazy, act a bit of a prat, whatever. And then I had a really big night out on the Christmas Eve. And again, woke up the next day. I had so many years where I felt crap at Christmas and I just said, never again. So that was literally the last time that alcohol touched my lips was on Christmas Eve 6 years ago now it'll be. And that was the last time. But I think what they were talking about there was the crazy night out with drag queens.
Almost certainly, yeah. They did elaborate on
And
it.
just to be clear, when I said I woke up sleeping, I was everyone else is still at. It's not like I woke up in bed with a drag
Cut the
queen.
audio.
That wasn't the point. It was everyone's partying still, but so I had this thing where I'd always fall asleep when I was drunk. So everyone's partying in the living room, and I'm asleep on the sofa,
I've
like
got
slumped like
whipped
this.
cream and chocolate.
That's not true. And I was just like asleep like this, and then the drag queen sat next to me. But yeah, that's the.
Do you know what? Though? Like, as much as you kind of you will personally look back at it as like a dark place. I don't think a lot of. Well, I think some of the hardest hardships and the biggest challenges I've ever faced, personally or professionally, have led me into a much better place. Like you have to go through that to then, because if you've just been kind of casually and you never really had them problems or things you didn't like about yourself, you may have not made that leap to kind of level up. Obviously, it's different for every individual, but I believe that.
Yeah, I want to quote. I can't remember the exact quote, but I want to quote it exactly. So give me 2 seconds. I'm going to find it. But there's a Napoleon Hill book in the book Think and Grow Rich. Yeah, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. And I think that's so true. It's super powerful.
That is powerful. Well, we'll wrap up there. I've got one more question. Is there anything you wanted to ask me or you feel like you needed to get off your chest or you'd like to put out there to the world?
I suppose I just want to clarify that I did not wake up in bed with a drag queen just before that clip goes viral on.
We can mute that out.
But no, I think, look, I just want to give kudos to you, Frankie. Well, I appreciate that you invited me on the show and you've called a podcast to be frank, and I think you are very frank. You are exactly what you see. I think you're an incredibly inspiring young man without sounding condescending and like I'm an old granddad and whatnot. But I think what you're doing, the way you're doing it, the way you're showing up, what you're inspired to do, the level of professionalism you operate with is admirable. And I think that you, in your various roles and taking on the likes of Bitter X as a chair and doing those things, you aren't just doing stuff for money. You aren't just doing it for the sake of it. You want to be able to give back along the way. I've got no doubt in my mind that you are going to go very, very far in life with your attitude and the level of commitment that you have and willingness to invest in yourself, knowing that the impact that can have is admirable. So I want to say kudos to you.
All 3 of my listeners will hopefully agree with you. So I'm going to ask you a question because I think it's important that we sort of think about our futures. And you've now got a kid, you've now got a son. So what's a lesson you really want your son to learn, even if it hurts them?
What's a lesson I really want Henry to learn, even if it hurts him?
Doesn't have to. It doesn't have to hurt them, but just
Yeah, look,
be able to
I
find
think
out.
I think that the thing that I really want Henry to understand is that anything is possible when you put in the work, right? If you work smart, you work hard, you have clarity, you take intelligent action, you have the right peer group around you, then you can achieve amazing things. It's cliche to say, but so many of us just get in our own way for a variety of different reasons. I want him to know that's possible, but it's also, Frankie, the same thing that I want everyone that's listening to this and everyone that's in this room to also believe. You said earlier about accomplishments in business, and it's very kind words that you said. Like I've had way more business failures than I've had business successes. I don't regard myself as someone who has achieved greatness in business and have this huge P&L and a huge amount of wealth. I'm 36 now. I've lost everything financially twice already, and I've been in extremes. I've made a lot of money very young, but I've also been the other end of the spectrum where I've been in over 300 grand worth of personal debt and everything in between. So I've seen the highs and the lows twice. What that's done is given me a lot of wisdom. It's taught me a lot of things and a lot of lessons. Yeah, and I attempt to use those lessons to be able to pay them forward and do it in a way. So yeah, I want people to know they can achieve what's possible, get the right mentors and coaches and support. And that might not be me. There's a lot of people. We were on the way here driving and Thomas was in the car with me, and I will say to people, and look, we'll have a conversation. I'll see if I can help. If I think I can, once we've established some stuff, great, we'll have a conversation. If I think there's someone better suited, I'll point you in that direction, because I'm not the right person for everybody, and some people need something different. And that's great. I don't want to profess to go, yeah, I can help absolutely everybody, because I can't. But what I do want people to believe is that whether it's with me, someone else, or via the other resources they get themselves access to, is that they can live a life, fires them up, fills them with enthusiasm when they unlock that next level of potential, performance and purpose, because there's always another level.
It's possible.
And everyone has that next level within them. They can define it, and defining it is the starting point, because once you've defined it, you create the tension from where you are now to where you want to be, to then be able to then close that gap.
So if you're listening, you're in a good place or a bad place, you can always get out of it and you can always go to the next level. Will, you've been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on. And yes, hopefully we can have you on again someday.
Thank you for having me.